In any criminal court system, means, motive, and opportunity are the three elements of a crime needed to convince a jury of guilt in a criminal proceeding. They refer to the ability of the defendant to commit the crime, the reason the defendant had to commit the crime, and whether or not the defendant had the opportunity to commit the crime. The person or persons who killed Tupac Shakur may have had all three at one time. In the examination of the murder of Tupac Shakur, we remember the word of Occam, who claimed that the simplest explanation is likely the right one. Who would have the means, motive, and opportunity to snuff out the greatest hip-hop artist of the 20th century? Who would be capable of influencing a police department into ignoring key witnesses? Who would have the means to derail the investigation? And who would have a motive for the killing? Was it street justice? Or was it simply about the money? For the next 2 hours, we invite you to sit in the jury box as witnesses speak. And we invite you to hear the motive for why it was important for some to extinguish the light of one of the music industry's most successful artists. And we invite you to be a part of solving a puzzle the police have ignored. We call it a reckoning.
We ain't going nowhere. Yeah. Some people out there don't want us to represent the dime, man. They just want us to stop. This the reckoning.
Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding.
Tell my homie, give peace to the world, give peace till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning.
Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding.
Tell my homie, give peace to the world, give peace till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. This the truth that you hearing coming from the booth. Humble on part 1, mooring on part 2. I hope that they peep it in plenty ways. We no longer speaking, the motive is AK. They thought it was over cause they ain't like that. Circle the block, backtrack, we right back. It won't stop, it don't stop. No, telling all the fans the truth about Pop. Yeah, giving them reasons to ask questions. Countless nights of interviews, no resting. A million theories, but there is one truth. If it was you, tell me, what would you wanna do? The world's been waiting for explanations. Well, here it is now for those patiently waiting.
Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding.
Tell my homie, give peace to the world, give peace till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. Don't stop, it won't stop, can't stop. Tell my homie, give peace.
In an interview done with allhiphop.com in August of 2008, Las Vegas Police Department Representatives Ramon Denby states, "We are ready to follow up on any information that comes our way, and that we will exhaust any new leads or information." Yet in the last year, the Las Vegas police have made no attempt to follow up on leads provided by any of our witnesses. To remember what our witnesses had to say, we take a moment for a short recap.
There can only be one.
How amazing that Las Vegas themselves are not doing the same thing that the television shows are portraying, solving a murder case.
I'm coming forward with the information because someone asked me.
I believe it was a planned killing.
It is somewhat perplexing as to why a conspiracy case was not presented to the grand jury.
Just coincidentally, some gunman sticks his arm out of a white Cadillac and shoots the biggest rapper in America. Why didn't they shoot anybody else?
I see this as a typical assassination.
I need to talk to you and Kevin Hackey about some things that's going on with Pac in Death Row.
It was a label that he was working on, and we was going Outlaws. We was going to sign with that label, Machiavelli Records.
And Suge has told us that no one is to take masters from the studio anymore.
The radio came on with Snoop Dogg saying that he had no beef with New York. And Mr. Knight was very upset. They got to yelling at each other back and forth. They confronted each other basically to a face-to-face. I think Mr. Knight, with me not being there, he would have put his hands on him. He was that upset. And Pac's words were, I'm gonna cut out Machiavelli, and when I cut out Machiavelli, I'm the hell up out of here.
He didn't want it to go because he was like uneasy about going. He said he didn't want it to go.
Tupac told him, specifically told him, that he was a dead man walking.
If I can shift blame to someone else.
Reggie began to tell me about how he was upset at Kevin Hackey, and that Kevin Hackey had my Nextel two-way cell phone radio.
Reggie Wright told us not to carry any weapons.
If you cannot defend yourself, you're going to be an easier target for me.
So now I'm in a situation where I'm being asked to guard Pac without any weapons or a phone.
I think the reason they removed me from Tupac is because I was one of the few people that wouldn't buy into not carrying your weapon.
An innocent individual that comes in to protect someone, and he's totally set up.
I think Orlando Anderson's, the beating doesn't make sense.
Another crucial part of your planning is going to be whether or not your victim is aware that he's in danger.
I think Frank had no idea that I received them 4 phone calls.
So I'm walking all over the MGM looking for him before I could even realize he isn't even in the building.
That's the beginning of our downfall.
Its intent is to block the middle car.
And what I heard was, got him, got him.
Reggie Wright used to work for Compton PD.
Reggie is not honest.
He wasn't hearing it, and that was the end of that. So there was a lot that we never got done.
So I was one of the few people that spoke up and said, wait a minute, we were instructed not to carry weapons.
And we kept getting the runaround, yeah, we'll get you in touch with him.
When I was a judge, if I would have found out that police officers misrepresented or lied in a search warrant, I would have taken immediate action.
Murdered, yes. Assassinated, absolutely.
Reggie Wright Jr. is the one that brought him to that interview.
The fact that Reggie Wright Sr. is a police lieutenant, if that's not a conflict of interest, I've never heard one.
That communication, however obtained, either through search warrant or otherwise, needs to be gathered.
Yeah, a lot of people have died that were directly or indirectly linked to this investigation.
To this day, I believe that gotcha was inside the organization and not out.
How do you prove that the police are not doing their job when they will not tell anyone what they have done or are doing? How do you know they have done the right job? You can't. So what we have to do is determine a delta, the difference between what we have been told and what is truth. One thing is to continue to add witnesses who have never before been interviewed by police, which is exactly what we did.
Okay, Michael Moore should have been interviewed. Michael Moore should have been talked to. Right after Tupac Assassination, Conspiracy or Revenge, our first movie, when that came out, Michael Moore should have been contacted some kind of way by Las Vegas PD. They could, give a 100% or 50% effort to try to find him, to talk to him, to interview him. The information is still there and the information is valid. They didn't do it. Same thing with Tracy Robinson. Didn't do it. Kenneth Archer, Leslie Gaulden. These people are law enforcement or prior law enforcement. Las Vegas PD never interviewed them.
I'm gonna take out my glasses for this one because I want them to know. For everybody that think Pac was a hood person, Pac was not a hood person. He was never a gangster. He was never about the gangster stuff. He was always about making music, making money, and keeping his family happy.
Tupac was the guy who would run for mayor, okay? He's the guy who had that kind of pull and that kind of charisma.
A lot of the stuff he did from his heart, like he would give people money on the streets that he didn't know. He would stop and, you would have homeless people. He would always have money on him and he would give it to them. That's a lot of stuff that people didn't know about it.
Pac forced me to believe in him. He was so hungry to see change.
I have to say my best memory with Tupac was in Rome, and he was up all night dancing, because that was really him doing a little dirt, staying up all night, and being who he was, and then that night getting on stage, even though he didn't have to, and putting on a little concert for them over there.
His mother and one of my cousins and aunts, they knew each other, so we used to hang around each other when the birthdays and things like that come around.
We were on a layover flight in Texas. We had to land the plane because Tupac's background group, the Outlaw Immortals, they were for less of a term, they were acting up on the plane, and they made the flight attendants and the pilot uncomfortable. So when we landed the plane, we were met by PD. What I remember about Tupac was he was so angry with the Outlaw Immortals that not only was he lecturing them like a dad would to his sons, but they all had on their diamond necklaces representing the label, and he took all of the necklaces, put them in his pocket, and basically told them, you'll get them back when and if I decide to give them back.
Look, watch, we're doing a video. Watch this, watch me, watch. Watch what's going on so you can see when you come in, you can see if I'm giving you something. If y'all all walking around like this, we could do this shit separate. I could rap you, you rap me, you rap. What's the point? Interaction. Come on, man. Come on, here. Run it back. You just say, yeah, we got it. All right. And the next one, this nigga blindfolded.
Pac took me when I was 16 years old. He was like a big brother. I always tell the people he's like a big brother to me or a father figure to me.
The Outlaws, the Dog Pound, those guys were kids at the time. Okay, they were 16, 17, 18 years old.
I didn't see Gaddafi in some years. As I grown up to be a teenager, he grown up to be a teenager. When I ran back into his mother, she was telling me that he was a rapper now. And this was a time when I started doing rap music myself and I was writing. And she was telling me he was doing music now and his brother is Pac, and they coming to New York, so they wanted to introduce me to him.
And to keep them under control and to keep them out of trouble, we had to pay a little bit more extra attention to them when we were out doing video shoots or out on tour.
This one particular one was Mutar, and Mutar had a story. And Tupac had written a song, had an idea for a song.
And when I met Pac, man, he was a good brother, you know what I mean? From the door, I seen good in a brother when he walked in the room.
And he wanted them to talk about that, to write about that. And he wanted Mutar to write about that. Mutar kind of had gotten it, he could do it a little expressive. But for some reason, Qatari wasn't getting it. And the other one, Malcolm, wasn't really getting it because they didn't know the story, wasn't their story, So he got them writing and they bullshitting, pretending they writing. And now he's pissed off when he see what they've done, nothing. So he sent them back up to my daughter's house in the Bronx with the beat and the boom box at that time, the boom box. Yeah, big box. And go up there and don't y'all come back. You ain't getting no weed, you're not getting no water, you're not gonna eat unless you got it done. So I'm up there at my daughter's house and I'm watching them up all night and they stop it. Then they write a little bit, then they let it play a little bit more and they write a little bit and they arguing back and forth with each other, and you can feel the tension because, hey, they gotta get something done because, oh boy, he's wounded, mind you. He has been shot in the Quad studio. So he's wounded and he's the wounded warrior and he's taking bullets and here you little no accounts can't do nothing. And they up there and they trying real hard because they want to be good. They want to do right. And when they come back, they had made something. I forgot the name of it, but they had something and he was pleased enough because he was a sucker. He played hard. But they gave him enough for him to tell him roll up something.
Pac wanted to do something that was out of LA, so he brought Fatal with him. Sometime later, Fatal got up in the middle of the night and had taken the keys to the Lexus. And he had taken off in the middle of the night, like 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever time it was. And the unfortunate thing for Fatal was that it became fatal because he totaled the car. He totaled Pac's, it was brand new, it just, had gotten it. He totaled that car. Right after that car got totaled, Pac kicked him out of the Outlaws. Okay, he was no longer part of the Outlaws. Fatal got sent back to wherever he was from, New Jersey or wherever it was. And I never saw Fatal anymore, And there was another incident with another outlaw, which was Big Syke. I came to work one day and Pac said, hey, Syke, you see that nigga around here? Do what you do. He's not allowed. I don't want him nowhere around me. And I didn't know what was going on with that other than the fact that I knew this for sure. that because after the All Eyes on Me CD had dropped, Big Syke was trying to get a record deal, and he was going to be getting a deal because he told me himself that he was going to be getting a deal. And Pac, I believe, didn't want him to have a record deal with Death Row because he was going to sign him under his label that he was putting together, Machiavelli Records. Okay, so I think Syke went to Suge and tried to do a deal with Suge. Suge told Pac about it, and I never saw Syke no more. And I like Syke. Syke was cool, you know. I like the work he did on Thug Life, and I really like the work he did with Pac on All Eyes on Me. But you know, that was Pac, man. You cross him, there's no gray area. It's black and white. You cross him, you do something, you screw up, you are out. And he proved that by kicking Fado out for wrecking a car, and Syke for, you know, whatever he was trying to do as far as trying to strike up a record deal with Death Row.
Once you get up there and see a fat motherfucker, I gotta shoot him in his fucking cold. I got to hit the belly. That's right. That whole problem came up in there. Nobody get the belly. That's me. The belly is me. I want the belly. We're gonna sell like for $1 million. Just don't shoot me. We're gonna sell like for $1 million. Hold up. Time out. Anybody see Tragic? I'm looking for Tragic. Tragic. We're gonna find us some Tragic.
One day on the set of Gridlock, Tupac asked Kevin Hackey to go get a bottle of Hennessy for him, and he gave, you know, Kevin the money to go pick it up and everything. Kevin goes to the liquor store. He come back with the Hennessy, gave it to Pac. Now Pac and the Outlaws, they were in the trailer, and they had, you know, some girls in there, and they were partying and everything. So Kevin comes back, he gives the Hennessy to Pac. Probably about 15 minutes later, Pac, it must have dawned on him that he didn't get his change back from Kevin. So he comes out the door, and myself and Leslie and Kevin were standing like right by the trailer. So he comes out and he goes, "Where's my change at? Where's my change?" And, you know, I'm like looking at Kevin like, "Kevin, you went to the store, so where's his change?" So he goes, "Give me my change," right? So Kevin walks over, you know, give him his change. He goes, "I'll kick y'all ass. I'll kick all of y'all. I'll kick both of y'all." And, you know, he's drunk and he's high. You know, they've been in there doing his thing. So I'm like, man, what was that all about? And, you know, we all looked at each other, kind of hunched our shoulders. So probably about another 5 minutes later, one of the Outlaws come out there, and they come out and they get me. And they go, "Pac wants you, man, Frank." So I go in, and Pac's in there, and he's like, "Hey, Frank, man." He goes, "I was seeing doubles." He goes, "I saw you, I saw Kevin." He goes, I wasn't talking to you. That wasn't meant to, you know, or directed towards you." I was like, "It's all good, brother." And I was hoping that it wasn't, you know. It was funny. It was a funny situation because, you know, they were doing their thing, and, you know, they were relaxed and everything. And it was just an incident to where, you know, he gave Kevin some money. He probably had about, I would say, it could have been more than maybe $5 and some change, or a couple of dollars and some change. It wasn't like it was, you know, they gave him a $100 bill and he didn't get his change. It was just he didn't have his change. And it must have clicked and dawned on him, I got my Hennessy, but I didn't get my change. And it was funny because in Italy, when we were in Italy, he gave myself $50 for Michael Moore and I to get us something to eat. And I went to give him his change, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want that." He goes, "Don't worry about it," you know. And our food was like $45, so it was just a little bit of change. And he didn't ask me for the change in Italy. I said, "Pac, you need to stop drinking and smoking at the same time because they are not working, brother."
And one day we were coming, I think, from Beverly Hills, and we were coming through the 405 into the 101, going to the studio, and he shook me because he was driving like maybe 100, 110. He got pulled over by Highway Patrol, and the Highway Patrol stopped him to get his autograph.
He could never dance. Did you ever notice, if you look at Tupac's videos, he was stiff as a board. He couldn't dance, but as a little boy he could. Whatever they saw, they liked. But you look at him later, he was not the dancer. Not really. No, check him out. No. He did the Digital Underground. You check him out. Let a dancer look at it and tell you, no, his technique is off.
Tupac introduced us, and he's like, you gotta meet Layla. You guys have to work together.
We had a mutual manager, a lady named Layla Steinberg. Layla had contacts all over Frisco, the Bay Area. It didn't matter East Bay, North Bay, South Bay. She just had connections.
She was managing him. We actually did the Mac Mall video, which is probably one of my most favorite videos. And this Layla video where we had to have them be old men playing dominoes on the porch.
Playing dominoes was the thing. That was like playing bones was the thing. I don't remember him being real good at bones, and so we used to go at it for hours. And while everybody was playing bones, he would be writing. You know, he always had his little notebook and writing. And he'd throw away. And I look back now and say, man, I wish I'd have kept some of those things he threw in the garbage, because you know he would throw away so many songs.
When he did Trap, I lived in this apartment on the 23rd floor, and my husband had went out of town. I had a small TV, maybe a 21-inch. I took that TV, put it in the living room. House full of people, apartment full of people, standing around this little TV watching the premiere of Trap. My hallway was flooded with people. I had told everybody I could. It was just like a movie premiere, but it was a premiere of Trap.
I was a young mother with my own artist dreams, and I met someone who was not afraid to scream out and let everybody know who he was, what he was going through, and what he wanted to affect. From the moment that I met Tupac at the age of 17, he was one of the most startling individuals I've ever met.
Had this place called the Top Ramen Shack. This was the most ghetto fabulous little spot that you could possibly ever be in. We had all these cabinets with no food. You know what Top Ramen noodles are? That's why they called it the Top Ramen Shack. The Top Ramen Shack just basically had noodles. Everybody ate noodles. If you didn't have a bowl, you took your powder and put it in your bag and shook up the bag and just ate the noodles right there. Because they didn't want nobody had no food in there. The refrigerator, maybe had maybe couple 40s, Kool-Aid maybe.
He couldn't stay hidden. How could he? You know what I mean? He was not that person. He spoke his mind to his credit and to his detriment. He spoke his mind. He said what he felt, and sometimes those feelings were, and sometimes those feelings was, oh my Lord. But they were his feelings and they was true.
He was, and still is, just one of the most amazing voices.
When Tupac and all of us got kicked out of the Top Ramen Shack, eventually we was gonna get kicked out of the Top Ramen Shack because we got raided.
I loved Pac instantly.
She said, come and stay. She already had 5 kids. So you're talking about 5 kids and 5 grown men or more sleeping. The only place we could sleep was on her living room floor.
I can't remember how many people have lived with us.
And those who remember back in the day with Pac, they will know we all slept on the floor. You just had to get your spot on the floor.
People will remind me they stayed with me at one point or another. That's a part of me. I will always be a mother to many.
But at least we had a spot. When it was raining, when it was cold, it didn't get cold in the Bay. We had a spot.
Tupac knew absence. He knew affection. He had a mother who planted amazing seeds in him, who loved him dearly.
One of the biggest rally cries for detractors to the case of agents for death row being responsible for the murders is the contention that Tupac Shakur was not, in fact, leaving death row records. These detractors want the public to believe that there was no motive for the shooting and that Tupac was doing his business as usual with Suge Knight. In an interview with allhiphop.com, Reggie Wright declared, "I didn't know what the financial business was. I know they were all happy." Wright goes on in this interview to state that Tupac was going to have Machiavelli Records and that Suge was paying for all of it. In fact, In an interview done with a student fan, author Kathy Scott comes out directly with the claim that Suge Knight personally financed Tupac's business interests. There is not one piece of evidence to back that claim. In fact, the evidence in the Shakur versus Death Row lawsuit appears to state the opposite. With millions of dollars not being paid to Shakur and an audit to be performed, why would Tupac agree to such an endeavor? And what's more, the balance sheets and the death row accounting would clearly indicate an equitable interest for Knight in the business of Shakur. Yet no mention is made by death row of any counterclaim for money advanced to Tupac to form any of his businesses. We chose to delve deeper into this seeming contradiction and attempt to verify with those closest to Tupac. Afeni Shakur, in her litigation against Knight in the Shakur versus Death Row lawsuit, summarized the events and their understanding of them. The lawsuit claims, at the time he was shot, having completed his contractual obligations to Death Row and suspecting that Knight and Kenner had defrauded him, Tupac had begun making preparations to leave Death Row and establish his own record company. He had, among other things, established a corporate structure to handle and manage his affairs and had retained counsel, other than Kenner, to negotiate a merchandising agreement. In fact, at the time Tupac died, that contract had been fully negotiated, reduced to writing, and was merely awaiting execution. Further, in an interview with New Yorker magazine included in this FBI file on the killing of Shakur, attorney Benjamin Ogletree said, "From a legal standpoint, it was not so difficult. The contract signed in prison could have been challenged, but," he added, "you have to live after that. It was a question of how to walk away with your limbs attached and bodily functions operating."
It's motive. I mean, come on.
Pac is now in Dannemora. Everybody is visiting him back and forth, the guys. We want him out. Nothing is happening. We tried to get an appeal lawyer. We did have the appeal lawyer, Charles Ogletree, but that's time. And we hear that I got a phone call that Death Row had went to visit Tupac, and that I think he signed in with Suge. And then she called back and said he did sign with Suge. And it's, to me, I was like quiet for a minute, and then got scared and said, "Wow, do you know, I got it. I know he want to get out of jail, but now when he leaves, the question is how he's going to leave. He's either going to leave quietly. It's all going to be good. Suge is going to be cool with it. If Suge's not cool with it, it's going to be a problem because he's going. He's going to leave. It doesn't matter whether it's quietly or a problem. And I know Tupac is going to make it a problem if that person try to hold him once he fulfills his obligation, because he's going to fulfill his obligation. So I was really taken aback by it because I was a little afraid of Tupac, how he was going to maneuver himself through that deed.
He was done. He was done. He was done. There were meetings with attorneys. Yaz and I, yeah, he was done. He was done. He had fulfilled his obligation with Death Row and no intentions of renewing any sort of paper agreement.
After the MTV Music Awards, prior to us going home, there was an altercation about what Snoop had done, and Mr. Knight was very upset, and they got to yelling at each other back and forth. They confronted each other basically to a face-to-face, and this is the first time I've ever heard of Machiavelli, before it even came out to be a CD record, that he's going to give Suge all the rights to Machiavelli. He just wants his freedom, and he wants off Death Row.
And what about the claim that Michael Moore was lying, based on an interview Tupac Shakur had with MTV in New York just days before he was killed? Tupac talks about an entity that was allegedly to be formed to recruit rappers from the New York area. This entity was Death Row East. In spite of lofty promises, no evidence suggests that Tupac had anything to do with Death Row East. The majority of the evidence stands that Tupac set about his own course of action with his own business associates. Michael Moore talks about his relationship with Knight and Death Row Records and his decision to leave the organization. Remember, Moore went on to work with Death Row for over a year after the killing.
I had some loyalties to Death Row, and I still do. I just think that it was the thing to do. Talk to Mr. Knight, let him know that I was leaving, so that I can be clear of Death Row.
And what about Death Row East? If Knight and company were really planning to expand Death Row operations to the East, why did it never happen? Was it ever to happen? Or was it just another lie that Tupac was told? The evidence speaks for itself.
He knew gangsters, what they would perceive as gangsters, tougher guys than a Suge. He just didn't know gangsters, those gang people. But the people in the Black Panther Party that did 99 years was also some tough asses. And they schooled him on revolutionary tactics and how you do this and that. And after a while, he didn't want to hear that no more, because he'd tell him, Mama, to take off your kente cloth. He wasn't a nationalist like that. You understand?
He was on a mission. I think even when I met him back in '93, he was on a mission. He was always, he meant what he said. It was not a shallow conversation. I met him on a video set. The first time I met him, I think he was doing I Get Around or something. It was being shot at one of my friend's house. The guy was like shining.
Because right now I got 2 movies records they're about to come out. You know what I mean? So that's enough to get us another deal for 1 movie.
You've got this energy that God has given you, and people recognize it, good people and bad people, and they pounce on your energy. They pounce on your history that helps make you who you are, and they want to smother your fire.
No. This is my story. I love this shit. I don't got nothing. I'm not thinking of nothing that I don't want to be involved in. I don't want to sell my ideas. I don't want to plant my thoughts. I want to watch them grow. I want to plant it with the right. I want to match it with the right mate and let's both nurture it and make it grow and then cut it when it's healthy and feed everybody.
He would call his mom with nonsense, pretty much.
Hey, baby. You like the fuzz of the coke party, man. Baby, who called the police? Man, who called the fuzz? Hide the door, baby. Hide the door. Hey, yo, who called the fuzz? Damn. Oh, man. Oh, man. He ain't got no hair like you. Oh, man, baby, I'm gonna tell you. He ain't got no hair like you. Dreads ain't working, baby. That's out of style, baby. The dreads ain't working, baby. You want to do something like this, baby. Look at that. That got bounce and condition to it. Till you can do that, okay? All right, baby. Come on, Trey, let's roll it. What's happening? Oh. She would never let your feelings down. Yo, we gotta get a win. We gotta get one of the wins. That's his thing. I'm telling you to do that challenge. You gotta do that. She's a super freak. Super freak. She's super freak. Now. Temptation scene. Let me tie somebody up. I'm about to get freaky. My name is Rick James. Come on. I'm about to tie somebody up and burn them. Oh, man. Somebody freak. I'm so goddamn Rick, I feel so good about to burn somebody. Burn my saxophone player. Burn him. Oh, man.
It's the summer of 1996. All Eyes on Me has reached quintuple platinum status. Tupac gets to see his first #1 single. His next album, to be released in November of '96, is called Machiavelli, or The 7-Day Theory.
We had went out there one time and to Vegas, and we go into his room, and he got the big room with the bathtub in it, and we're duly impressed. And he's walking around with his little mink slippers on and everything, and telling us stop begging people for money because we in the casino. We had never really gambled before, and somehow or another he heard about it. So we sit down like this, you know, get chastised again, and then he say some woman had called him, was talking to him, and I kind of chafed at it, and he looks at me because now he got to prove to me who his auntie, who I tell you, he was the apple of my eye, and he knew it. And now he's telling me that he went out with this older woman, and oh really? Yeah, it's almost as old as you at that time. What? Really? And I'm like, okay, little cute thing, you know. We was like, oh, so ain't he cute? Ain't he cute? But that was to put me in my place, to let me know that now he's grown And I can't nobody tell him, you can't tell me what to do now. You can't tell me, Gene, you can't be giving me all this advice. I don't want to hear it. Thought it was cute. And then, of course, we got back to the moment at hand. Could we have some money so we can go back to the casino?
Once you can throw it, you know what I mean? I see your birthday, yo! Let's sing like Yo, what if I walk in the club like, and just be tripping on niggas like, what the fuck you looking at? Hey y'all, let me get a Hennessy and Coke.
Sarah, you do it!
We get a Hennessy and Coke, man.
Hurry up!
Hey,
1, 2.
Hey,
Boy,
baby.
he put his foot off in here.
I know you been looking at my hair.
I snatch that shit off, nigga.
Snatch what off?
I snatch that shit off.
Cut your motherfucking face.
Don't cut him, Pierre.
Hey, man. This is motherfucker off my house. I will hurt you. Get this motherfucker off my house. What's happening? What's happening? Get out my house. Whether I'm bald-headed or I got hair to my knees, I'll still rush any one of you tricks out there. It's still West Side Outlaw no matter.
You see this on hard copy, you gotta leave the address.
Well, see this on hard copy.
Yeah.
They keep pulling my hair.
Don't keep pulling Pierre's hair.
Okay, put a nigga on with the drink. No. Mars. Drinks. Some alcohol. Nah, come on, man. What you doing?
The CEO of Death Row Records, Knight had built an empire that controlled untold millions of dollars in revenue from the acts of Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac Shakur. Knight entrusted the protection of the artists to former and current police officers and fire department officials. Tupac's closest bodyguard was former bodybuilder and U.S. Marine Frank Alexander.
I ended up on a video shoot in December of 1995 in New York with Snoop and the Dogg Pound. There was an incident that happened there where someone shot up Snoop's trail.
I do recall Frank he was basically the leader in pulling everyone out of that Winnebago to get them into the security van and get them out.
And we got everyone out of the trailer and, got everybody out of there safe and sound, got Snoop back.
Frank was the head guy, lead guy as far as getting Snoop and getting everyone else that was in the trailer out of that trailer and into safety.
2 days later, we're back in California. I'm at the studio, and Suge called me into his office, and he was like, hey, Frank, tell me what happened in New York. He goes, everybody around here is talking about you're the hero, man. What happened out there? So I told Suge the story about what happened in New York, and all I was doing was my job. And I wasn't considering myself a hero or anything like that.
On certain occasions, Suge treated us well.
Suge said, well, Pac is going to probably want you. Snoop's probably going to want you. He goes, you're going to be like the most requested, bodyguard for these guys. And I was like, okay, whatever. A couple of days later, I get a phone call from Reggie saying Tupac has made a decision. He no longer wanted that rotating schedule. And out of the 4 guys that was rotating on him, he's chosen you to be his main security. He wants you as his bodyguard. What do you want to do about it? And I was like, I want to think about it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, I work with Wright Security.
Kenny Archer continued to work for Wright, even after the shooting. Archer still continues to work as a bodyguard.
Him and Frank had a good relationship.
I had been working with Pac on that rotating schedule a little bit. And, I saw everything that they said he was doing. He'd try to leave you, he'd run through red lights. You just got to be like literally on his butt as you being the chase car, being the bodyguard.
Me and Pac didn't get along that well.
Michael Moore and Rich McCauley have since left the security company.
I started on Pac as a substitute, filling in for Frank, filling in for Leslie. Whoever was on him, I was more of a fill-in for that.
He would just blow lights. He would, go places, and he wouldn't tell you where he was going. You had to follow him to know where he was going.
I actually got called by the boss asking if I wanted to work with Pac, and I actually remember saying that I wasn't interested.
And it just got to the point to where I said, okay, I could deal with this. The situation came about, being the main bodyguard. I accepted it. He and I eventually hit it off. Everything was cool, and I was his main bodyguard. when I was on the set of Gridlock with Tupac, he would come over to me and he would say something to me like, how's Pac doing? You know, and how's everything going? I'll say, oh, everything is fine. Everything is going good. It was like, well, you know, he really likes you. You know, you're the only one he gets along with. You know, tell Reggie to put you on a salary. You know, make sure that you're getting paid right. Tell him I said so. Reggie made a statement that Tupac didn't like Frank, that Kevin Hackey was the main bodyguard, and he liked Kevin Hackey more than he did Frank. First of all, nigga, let me tell you something. I was the main bodyguard. I have no reason to lie, and it's been out there for 12 years, and if I was not Tupac's main bodyguard, Reggie, why would you tell me that I was the main bodyguard? Why was I assigned to him? You're the one that called me.
You'll be all right, bro, honestly.
Move, don't move.
Yeah.
Last resort.
Yeah, you'll be okay.
Move. You feel yourself falling? Tuck and roll, tuck and roll. This way.
He had lots that he wanted to do.
Tracy Robinson recorded a series of interviews with Tupac which have not been heard by the public until now. In these creative session tapes, Tupac spoke of his intentions to expand to more than what he was.
I don't think I would have had a career had I not had he and Ice Cube. Whenever I was around him, it was like the floodgates of ideas have opened.
Decent girl. Me and a half decent girl. And we do some shit where they got love scenes and a script with dialogue and emotion. We will not lose. It'll be the new 9.5 weeks. Niggas will take their girls to that. Everybody fucking to see it. Right. We can push the envelope. You know what I'm saying?
In these tapes, he makes his role with Tracy Robinson clear and defined.
And he knew that I was receptive, and he knew that I was like, I've kind of always been a little bit of a documentarian. I just always have a notepad with me, and I started carrying a little tape recorder with me because I was like, I can't write fast enough.
No, we can be nice.
It's going to be a quality project.
And that's how I want to be, and I want to be so grown up about it. I want everybody to feel so good about it, but I want to do it real quick and make a lot of money on it.
In fact, Tupac asks Tracy to become his counselor and advisor.
So Tracy, your job
My job
is to be the job I want to offer you is to be my, I don't know what it's called in regular life, but in my zoned out mentality, to be like my consigliere, to give me advice and to tell me how to take my ideas and make them sound.
I have still some of the notebooks where he would say, yeah, I want to do this, you know, how do you want it? I want to get these girls from Vegas, I want to have these different sets. We're going to be like cowboys. We're going to have like the kind of the, was one scene was old style scene with the girls, the hair and the makeup. It was just very, very over the top, you know, kind of situation for a music video, but it was fun. We just were doing, it was just doing. We just kept going and kept going.
It is clear that the motive of Shakur was to leave death row and move on to his own projects.
Some Crips in the club at the House of Blues, and they came over to Tupac and they asked him, who do you represent? Who are you down with? And Tupac said, what are you talking about? He goes, who you repping? He goes, you with death row, they're Bloods. You know, you hanging out with Crips, you hanging out with Bloods, who you repping? And he was like, man, I don't represent no one but me. I'm Tupac Shakur. He goes, that's who I represent. I am neutral. And that was it. Pac was friends with Snoop. Pac was friends with Shook. If you want to represent a color with Tupac, it would have been green. And that's the color of money.
He wanted to make money. He would tell us, y'all ain't got no sense. You don't know how to make money. Use me. Y'all can't make a t-shirt. You can't do a t-shirt business. So we start trying to make t-shirts. You know, use me. I'm a commodity. You got the best thing to make money right here. So why would he be stuck with a Suge Knight?
Was it always his plan? Or was it a desire that came toward the end of his contract fulfillment? When did Tupac plan to leave death row? Or was it something he knew he would do from the start? There seems to be a consensus on the matter from those closest to him.
Anybody knew Pac knew that he wanted to do his own thing. Because he knew he was talented. He knew that. There's no doubt about it. But he appreciated the opportunity to hook up with Digital and all that stuff.
You can still, if you rapping, you can come all the way up into that. Don't bang your head on the camera, but you can look inside if you're rapping.
Excuse me, can I put some tape on the bottom of your shoe? No problem. Do you mind? Thank you. Now let's get a chair for you.
There you go. Nah, just put it on right there. Just put it on right there. No problem.
Yeah. No, stay.
So I want to keep 24/7 like that, or not keep it, because now we got a hot name from beating up dudes on the set. So
create a film cut.
no, you can name the pictures, which is already set up, which we should push to them. And then that way it'll be like that. Then when we get the money, then I can say, okay, we already got that. We got directors, we got cinematographers, we got writers, we got everything. We can produce it, we can do it, we can do everything. We're ready right now.
There is a popular myth that Tupac was going to start a record label that would be released through Death Row, called Machiavelli Records. But the evidence of Tupac leaving Death Row works counter to this myth, as does the practical consideration of Tupac losing an additional 20% or more by not working directly with Interscope. Tupac asks Robinson to find a way to avoid that middleman altogether.
You can go to wherever you got to go to get the information, but don't let them know. What way do I do that? How do we own all this? You know what I mean?
The violent actions of Death Row against other artists were almost legendary, and his whole family and staff knew it. Knight's violence toward artists who questioned the ownership of masters or who requested an accounting from Knight were met with violence, as these court documents show. His whole family and staff knew that when Tupac made his first overtures toward leaving Death Row, the fact alone that he would dare challenge the record label's accounting was sufficient grounds for violent retribution. This prompted Yasmin Fula to visit Frank Alexander and Kevin Hackey on the set of Gridlock and warn them.
Wasn't y'all just talking?
Myself and Kevin Hackey, we were both on duty that day on the set. And it was in the evening time because it was already night. And I got this phone call from Yasmin Fula. And she said, hey Frank, I'm coming down to Gridlock. Don't you and Kevin leave because I need to talk to the two of you. So, probably 30 minutes later, she shows up. And she goes, hey, there's some things going on over at the Death Row office. Pac is called an audit on the Death Row office. Now, this was the first time I had ever heard anything about an audit, obviously, because she came down to tell us this story about, the audit going on. And her main thing was that she wanted us to pay, a little bit more closer attention to Pac, watch him a little bit closer, because she wasn't sure of the repercussions of this audit that was going to be going on, because apparently Pac was pretty hot over it, okay? And she basically said, you guys need to step up your game, watch him. We're shaking some things up right now. And where that was going to lead to and what was going on with it, she did not explain to us. And it wasn't like we needed to know. Our job was security, and that's what she wanted to make sure that we were doing, stepping up our security.
Nowhere in the Dannemora Agreement was the most critical provision, the one for which Tupac sold his soul and for which Knight repeatedly took the credit, that Death Row had any right to Tupac's masters. Knight had no contractual right to keep them from him. According to the adversarial claims made by the Shakur estate in 2008, by the time the 1996 Interscope agreement was made, Tupac had recorded approximately 152 unreleased songs that were not included in the 3 albums that were the subject of the 1995 Dannemora Agreement. Nothing in the 1995 Dannemora Agreement gave either Death Row or Interscope the right to exploit the unreleased songs. Moreover, there was nothing in the contract between Death Row and Tupac which gave Death Row ownership of the tracks, either the compositions or the sound recordings. As such, both the sound recordings and the compositions belonged to the artist, Tupac, even though the physical master tapes were in the possession of Death Row.
It just was going to be ugly, and because we had already heard on the phone, driving around in LA, a call, Tupac is at Death Row, pissed off. He wants his shit. That was in June.
To this day, the bankruptcy trustees are still finding Death Row masters hidden by night in an attempt to conceal them from their rightful owners. On October 2, 2008, a woman led Deputy Christopher Schmidt of the Livingston County Sheriff's Department to a storage unit in Burlington, Michigan under her name. That's where the officer found what would appear to be certain master recordings and videos contained in 10 by 12-inch black boxes. Deputy Schmidt told the court that he had in his possession what he believes to be numerous master recordings of death row records that he obtained from the storage unit. Also located in the storage unit were work orders, allegedly signed to remove the property from Pacific Coast Title Archives.
He wasn't feeling comfortable with what he was receiving, I guess, as far as his royalties or whatever, because every Friday, the runner from death row office would bring $5,000 in cash and give it to me to give to Tupac later on that day. And Pac would, every Friday, would tell me, Frank, call the office and have Roy bring me, five. And, five was $5 grand. And that's what I received every Friday from Roy from death row office was $5 grand for Tupac. It was like Friday was his payday, but it was only $5 grand every time. Yeah, he was making millions of dollars, but $5 grand out of $1 million is not much. That's not even a fraction of a percent.
If he was there, it was confrontational if he was going to get whatever he was going to get. If he was asking for his masters or asking for the paper that he signed, because he did those 3 albums, it didn't take him long. So that's the completion of that obligation as I know it, that the 3 albums. So, and I tell you, he had movie scripts and he was truly interested in that. People were talking to him about it. He was bigger than death row. His ideas was bigger than that because he wanted to go further than that, and he wasn't dragging a Suge behind.
Ain't you gonna get that?
There's no question that Tupac would have been a great actor. I don't see why he wouldn't have done roles like Denzel. Obviously, we all know he studied.
I can only say good about Tracy.
Lying piece of shit, man.
I know I'm going this way, so I don't want to pay nobody to ride with me. You know what I mean? I would much rather you get yours and I get mine together and do that instead of just being like, look, at the next 5 we're gonna get paid. It goes 10,000. Why? I know we're gonna make it there. You go with us and you'll make more than that. You go 10 while you waiting. You know what I mean? Like that. That's what I feel.
That wasn't his plan. It wasn't gonna be. He wasn't gonna be wedded to no death row.
Check us out. We're gonna overpower the policeman because he couldn't do it. We're gonna overpower the one felony having it's gonna shoot to the left. It's move forward. But if he don't, we're gonna have a drink after the shoot. Okay? So have fun. Come on. No pressure, no pressure.
With a mic, sir.
And you look at those pictures, that last photograph of him, the deer in the headlights photo, and he just looks sad.
I don't have no problem walking up on these old motherfuckers saying, look at the dinosaur. Straight up, that's the type of nigga I am these days. For mine, I will go all out. I treat this shit like a straight, I'll tell them niggas, look at the dinosaurs. You could work with me, nigga, and you could be a part of evolution. Or you could be a past, you could be something in the past, nigga. We'll be digging your ass up in 20 years.
His death is related to us. And that's from what I've gathered when I was at New York, what I heard Pac tell Suge Knight, and what I heard over that radio that night after the shots were fired. And us, meaning I was a part of that at the time, and Death Row was who I was working for.
So I think after we did the MTV Awards, I don't know what went down, but he wasn't too happy about it, and he didn't care about going anywhere. So he didn't feel like he didn't want to go to Vegas. I don't even think he wanted to do the video.
With Tupac set on his own path to success without the weight of death row, and now having given his 2-week notice tonight in the New York hotel room September 4th, Tupac decided to focus on more personal issues and cancel the death row scheduled trip to Las Vegas the following weekend. There are some who claim that Tupac's intention not to go to Vegas was not true, that he never opted out of the trip. They claim that Tupac was only upset at night. This, however, was not the case. For the first time, we hear the real reason that Tupac was not wanting to attend the Tyson fight that weekend and the family problem he contemplated using as an excuse not to go.
Pac's cousin, my son, Kenny, was on drugs. And he had taken one of Pac's rifles, and Pac heard about it.
Don't thank me. Hey, Si, shoot this piece of shit.
And he didn't want to go to Vegas. So he didn't want to go to Vegas, but this was a good reason for him not to go, because he was going to come down here and kick his cousin's ass. That is true. There was a whether or not to come to Atlanta to beat his cousin's butt or to go to Vegas. And my daughter went because Kadada went to be with Kadada. And yeah, he did not want to go to, because he was with Kadada. He had a thing going on. He had a fantasy that he wanted. He wanted to get married. He wanted to have kids.
I know niggas like me. I can fuck everybody's girl. I can fuck them all, for real. But I can never have one to myself. Because the thing that they love so much is the mystery. As soon as they know me, it's like they want the mystery. You know what I mean? It's like they like the bad guy more than they like the real guy. Because once you know who I am as a human being, it's not as exciting because you can figure it out.
Wasn't so much Vegas as his girl, and you know, that thing that they were doing together, and that dream that he was into, as opposed to the thing in Atlanta was a family thing. It's a gun, you know, the guns, and his cousin is on drugs again, and whatever.
Tupac's decision to leave death row may have been unwelcome, but his desire to audit death row's books and take his master tapes was unacceptable.
I think there was pressure on him in terms of his work and that thing, you know, his sense of obligation, but he really didn't want to go. They begged him to go. And when he left, my daughter, who was out there, she went with him.
Sources claim that after the trip to New York, Tupac was convinced to cancel his trip to Atlanta and go to Las Vegas anyway. Tupac put both Kenner and Rightway Security on notice. Shakur would no longer use their services.
At Club 662, after the Mike Tyson-Bruce Seldom fight, we were heading over there. It was a benefit for a retired boxer. And the reason that it was a benefit for this retired boxer is because the feds and the police had been watching 662 every time we would come in town. And they kept looking for a reason, I guess, to shut it down. And we were not allowed in that weekend. So they had this, benefit for this boxer going on, and that was going to get us into the club for that night. We had the security meeting earlier that day, and we were told by this attorney that we had never had a meeting, like this before, where an attorney at his office would have been in charge of a meeting and would be telling us that we couldn't carry weapons. But the reason that we supposedly wasn't able to carry weapons is because of this benefit that was going on for this retired boxer, and there was no need for us to have weapons.
Las Vegas Metro officer Patrick Barry, a retired professional boxer, did not know Marion Knight or Tupac Shakur personally. He owned Barry's Boxing in Southwest Las Vegas, a charitable, youth-oriented boxing program created to help young boxers in their 20s. Khalees arranged a fundraising event at Club 662, as Knight was a client of his, in his role as director for Friends of the Las Vegas Metro Police. Khalees thought a fundraiser might help, but in the history of strange ideas, this was stranger still. Why raise funds for anti-violence with a man whose reputation for making hit records is overshadowed by his knack for violence? And why do it at a nightclub that was already having a difficult time getting licensed? But these were more than just normal security officials at a nightclub function. The individuals that were specifically being disarmed were the personal bodyguards of an internationally known celebrity. Frank Alexander and Michael Moore work individually and were assigned the personal protection of Tupac. This brings up another contradiction that defies logic. In a situation where there was going to be a high probability of violent behavior, what possible sense would it make to ask the only people responsible for the security that evening to not properly arm themselves? It is to be noted that there is no proof that it was Khalees' idea himself to disarm the guards of his own volition. He simply made the request. But there is no way to tell the difference between an order from Reggie Wright being conveyed through an attorney and an order from the lawyer himself.
That was the reasoning that day earlier for us not to have weapons. We were told to either leave them in our room or in our car. And how we got to the car is that it was going to be three of us. myself, Michael Moore, and Al Giddens were going to be the only three that was going to have weapons. And my car was parked on the opposite side of the hotel that night by the time we were ready to go to the Club 662. That's why I was getting in the car with Tupac, because my car was on the other side with my gun in the car.
1, told not to carry any weapons to Club 662. 2, we were told not to have any weapons on us at any time while we were in Las Vegas.
Reggie Wright asked me to ride with him to the meeting that we were having. It was about 12 noon, and we were going to George Calisa's office in Las Vegas. When we arrived there, there was 23 other security personnel for Right Way Security at this meeting, along with the attorney and Reggie Wright. When we got there, they started going through the meeting and what the meeting was about. And one of the main issues and the main points were we were not to carry our weapons. So that right away brought up the issue of why not. The topic of discussion about the weapons was why not? Who are going to carry weapons? Why we're not going to carry weapons? We were told that we could not carry weapons and no one should have a weapon on them.
Reggie Wright Jr. was a former Compton police officer. He was not only Suge Knight's security director, but he was also a partner with Knight and attorney David Kenner in the operations of Death Row Records.
It was very interesting.
When Knight went to prison for the beating of Orlando Anderson at the MGM, Knight lent his organization to a partner that would be both trustworthy and loyal to him, and at the same time have the means, contacts, and resources to enforce the rules of the organization. And in an organization with the name Death Row, the rules were upheld with violence and threats of violence. That man was Reggie Wright Jr.
Right Way Security, who provided security for Death Row Records.
We have previously stated that Reggie Wright and Suge Knight were more than business partners. In fact, these court documents filed by the U.S. bankruptcy attorney in 2005 claim that Knight transferred his business property interest to Reggie Wright Jr. in an attempt to sell the property without the bankruptcy court's knowledge. This is known in the courts as a fraudulent transfer. Reggie claims to have made no money off of it, insisting that the only money he has is from a disability pension from his days as a police officer in Compton. This clearly shows a level of trust between Knight and Wright. The McPherson lawsuit also shows Wright in the management capacity for Death Row, as does the Clear Channel lawsuit, shown here. But why in the Death Row debtor examination would Suge Knight, when asked who ran the day-to-day operations of the label, keep Wright's name out of it completely? Instead, naming his then wife, an artist at the label, as the officer of the company during his incarceration. Why would Knight perjure himself to keep Wright's name out of the examination when there were already volumes of data to support that Wright was running the company when Knight was in prison? Why would he lie? What is it that drives Knight to keep Wright's name out of the front line? Could it be a street loyalty? Or could Wright have something on Knight that could implicate both of them? And what would that something be? Even Wright himself in the All Hip Hop interview admits to running the day-to-day operations. So why lie about it?
Reggie told me, hey, they ain't giving time. I have the money, I have the people, I can have you killed, they ain't giving time.
They say the 60s was crazy, but the 80s was worse. Crack fucked blacks and gave birth to a curse.
The gunshots were fired from the suspect vehicle only, again, which is described as a white or light-colored newer Cadillac.
The moon's bright, the sky's misty. Know my future, cause I know my history. My life predicted by a gypsy. Murder, she wrote at the end of the story, the streets get me. That's why I live quickly and always keep a pistol with me. Ghetto prisoner, won't stop fighting until I'm free. Raising a city of fallen angels where niggas ain't scared to bleed. If money's the root of all evil, then greed's the seed. This ain't living. We taking cause ain't nobody giving. How can it possibly be peace in a country built on murder? Laws passed daily, my nigga, to purposely hurt you. I'm the product of a hate that society nurtured. When would an evil end? Too many browns and blacks in the system, victims of legal sin. In court praying for mercy when condemned by evil men. Ain't no love in the heart of the city. If it's a God, where is it? My homies dying over hundreds and fifties. I sit back, sit yak, and analyze the situation. Ain't a person alive today knowing the monster we facing. In crucified Jesus Christ, so Marcus Garvey for rice, shot Malcolm X in the chest, gave Nelson Mandela life. Tupac died at 25. Told my mama bury me with a 357 just in case God tripping, I don't get into heaven. Shit is crazy, huh? This is what I see. We are no longer slaves, but we sure ain't free. So until I ain't gotta kill and steal from my own folks, tattooed across my soul are these words I just spoke. So who the fuck y'all gonna call when I break all the laws on behalf of every innocent criminal?
Pac was gonna introduce, Mike was gonna come out to one of Pac's songs. And so we was real excited about hearing it. So we trying to find a station, we keep turning, we don't hear any sports. Finally we get the public radio station. And what we hear is rapper Tupac Shakur shot in Vegas.
We were in the cab and we heard, you know, something happened, Tupac, something, it was like, you know, over the radio, oh, those rappers, Tupac, something, you know, people have been shot.
Now we're stunned, nervous. I am petrol because I'm driving. And my husband, we have to go another 2 miles before we see a gas station.
It's like, oh no, I'm like, pull over, you know, I'm like calling Yas, I'm like, is everything okay? And she calls, says, no, go to the hospital.
So we pull off at a gas station and I call his office and Molly's sister answers the phone and tell us that, yep, he got shot and that he was in the hospital, but that he looked like he was gonna be okay, that he had gotten shot. I think they had to take out she didn't even say the lung then. We drove a little further, a couple of miles, nervous, stop, call again, and that's when they told us they had to remove a lung, but that people could live with the lung and that one of his fingers had gotten shot off. But we still don't get the scope of it. Trying to keep me up, trying not to get into the emotion of it. And we finally get to Vegas and we get to the hospital. We get to the hospital, my daughter is there, Molly is there, and my sister is there. My sister come out and tell me that y'all can go in, you and Tom can go in. When we get out the car, my husband, all of that holding in, when he stepped out the car, he slumped out. It was like all of the weight now had fallen and he was now, you could see the crushness, like he had aged. We go into the hospital and they take us into his room. He's in a coma. He has the tube in his mouth. I look at him and I'm really afraid. And I start, you know, the old things that the women do. What have they done to you and all of this? My husband say to me, don't do that because he can hear.
And I also remember seeing, you know, Suge roll by in the gurney with a little Band-Aid on his hand. And I was like, what happened?
And the first day, I think, when I saw Suge, I didn't want to see him because they say, look, Suge got shot. I can't see that. I don't see the shot. I see something, but it's not a shot. And Pac is in the isolation room, intensive care, and some of the death row people, the gangs really, were outside.
It was a haze. It was like a dark cloud that was just sort of over the organization, if you will.
When I saw him laying there, I thought to myself, he can pull through this.
So the last day, the day before, I had went in to see him, and when I went in to see him that day with my niece, it was like I knew, but I didn't know. You know, I looked at him and it reminded me of my mom when she was in a coma. So I cried real hard that day.
Tupac was loved by all of his colleagues, and he was loved by his security staff.
And the next day we went, me and my sister went, and they had called, we went, then we went back, then they called and said to come, and when we got there, they told her that his kidney was failing, and they wanted to put him on dialysis before. It wasn't there yet, but they wanted to put him on dialysis. Okay. Then they come back and say that every time they tried to hook him up, his heart would fail. And my sister was not really hearing him. And they said it, kept saying it, and she said, what did you say? And he said, we did it, and we had to resuscitate him 3 times. And when she heard that, she said, don't do that. Don't do my son like that. Leave him alone. Let him go.
The day when he died, she called me on the phone, and the guys who worked in my office, they brought me like a little blunt and some Cristal and Alizé. I never ever knew what Cristal or Alizé was before I met him.
Have you ever played the what if game? What if I could have done this? What if I could have done that? What if I would have had my gun? What I would have done? I have put myself in this position in my mind many times to say, what if I would have had my gun, what I would have done. And I've put myself in my mind imagining jumping out of the car and taking a firing position and firing back into that Cadillac, disabling the Cadillac to where it wouldn't have been able to have gotten away, and I would have shot back and hit one of the assailants that shot Tupac. Whatever would have happened. The what if game. I've played that game for 12 years.
The atmosphere at Death Row after the murders was unusual.
When we were still in California, they initially kept the bills paid. See, we thought that was Pac's house.
I didn't get any negative vibes from Suge regarding security. I did get some negative vibes from some of Suge's people regarding Frank. And there was a particular instance where I had a conversation with Suge in front of the studio one night. It was just he and myself, no one else was around. I told him, I said, Suge, I said the animosity and the different things that I'm hearing regarding Frank, I said, you should take control of that because that's not right.
I believe it to be unusual. In my opinion on why it was unusual was because I sensed that they blamed security for him disappearing.
I'm just saying what's real. How that go when you're in a group and you're in an organization and they your boss and you get paid, they pay you and all of that.
But prior to going into the meeting with Suge and all the artists from Death Row, Reggie met with us out front in his own meeting and instructed us to say certain things. But when I got in the meeting, I seen how the meeting was going and I spoke up on what should have been said. And I informed them, because Frank's name came up, that Frank had done some things wrong while he was covering Tupac. And I quickly corrected everyone at the meeting and told them certain things. The artists were unaware that we were told not to have any weapons. Therefore, Frank couldn't have done anything different.
And unfortunately, we didn't do that.
He wasn't going to throw himself in front of the bullets, so he did the right thing.
They did take some people downtown. The police, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police detectives did take some people downtown. And I believe the two women in the car who police claim had nothing to do with it. My sense at the time was that was a diversion. It was, take the attention away, make them turn their head, talk to Tupac and everything, and meanwhile, boom, a minute later a car comes up and shoots into the car, and then the girls are gone. But I don't know how they found them, but they did, and I was told that they interviewed them. I don't know anybody else who was interviewed other than those girls at the downtown station.
We examined the wisdom in the decision to go to Knight's home and the route they took after they left the house. Knight and Shakur had committed battery on Orlando Anderson. If the cadre who beat Anderson caught on tape and ran off, leaving the victim there at the scene of the crime, one would think the last place the suspect would flee to would be the place listed on your driver's records. This would be where the police are bound to look for him first. Yet, that's where Knight goes immediately after. If Knight had enough confidence to go to his Vegas home, the first place police would go to look to arrest him, it may be that he knew Orlando Anderson wouldn't press charges, or he knew that even if Anderson did press charges, that there was no way the police would come arrest him because they were paid off. Either way, they end up at Knight's home.
I think Orlando Anderson's, the beating doesn't make sense. I mean, he was kicked and stomped a little bit, That 12-year-old girl recently who was pictured on videotape, was beaten like crazy, and police didn't do anything. They didn't even take him downstairs. The police didn't take, or security, take Orlando downstairs, you know, at the MGM to talk to him about that beating. He just said no, he didn't want to press charges, and they sent him on his merry way. Maybe that was a setup. I mean, he was standing there waiting for somebody, and then Tupac shows up, and they start exchanging words with his entourage and everybody else, and they start stomping and yelling and doing their silly things. But it was odd that, I keep saying odd, but the whole thing is odd. Everything surrounding the case is odd. Orlando Anderson is leaning up at a wall watching people come out of the fight. And this is near the food court. And the bank of elevators is where this happened. And then you walk to the lobby, through the casino a bit, and then to the lobby. And it always struck me as that whole thing struck me as odd. And they let him go. He did not have a ticket to the fight. He did tell people at one point and told the police that he had a ticket, but he didn't have a ticket. He did not attend the fight. He's from Compton. He had no reason to be in Las Vegas. He told some people he came here to gamble. He had no reason, and that to me is you've got a guy at the scene of the crime and you have no reason for him to be in Las Vegas. So why was Orlando Anderson in Las Vegas? Nobody has been able to answer that question, and I asked the police that as well. He did not attend the fight, so he wasn't here for the fight. And then he just happens to be at the MGM waiting for, I mean, how did he know Tupac was going to walk through at that time? I mean, maybe he was, you know, maybe he was all part of, you know, it's like an Oswald, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, it all looks planned. If you lay it out and you look methodically at the case, you know, from beginning to end, the whole thing looks planned out. I'm sure there were variations, but yeah, Orlando Anderson looks a little staged. It looks a little planned out. And you know, an hour and a half or 2 hours later, Tupac Shakur is shot to death, and it all looks as if they were trying to find a killer they could point out afterward.
To be fair, we examine the random shooting theory for a moment. The entourage had plenty of opportunity to access the club in a more expedient route, yet they took the most difficult route possible. Was it because they wanted to be noticed? It would seem just as likely that the most direct, publicly known route was 2 straight lines, up Las Vegas Boulevard and down Flamingo. It is less confusing, and one would not want a shooter to get lost going to or going away from the shooting. Simply said, for the random opportunity to work, an implausible sequence of events would have to happen. When Knight went to prison for the beating of Orlando Anderson at the MGM, Knight lent his organization to a partner that would be trustworthy and loyal to him, and at the same time have the means, contacts, and resources to enforce the rules of the organization. And in an organization with the name Death Row, the rules were upheld with violence and threats of violence. In 1996, in fear for his life, Alexander agreed to a series of wiretaps. In these wiretaps, Alexander learns that lack of allegiance to Death Row means death.
He said it right out of his mouth, and his girlfriend confirmed it. Who, Reggie? Yeah. What did he say? Say what you did. She said they want me dead. He said that they said you told a lot of stuff.
These original recordings paint a different picture than the public image of Knight.
She said that the people at DRR want you dead.
I think I spent 1.5 years with Death Row after that, and then I walked.
I just heard that they want me dead. Okay. So I wasn't going to say this, but I think I better. Okay, that's affirmative. That's true.
I was hired by Mr. Knight when I first got started in this, and I felt it was the thing to do. I went to the prison, talked to him, and let him know I was leaving.
Because they were telling me that if it didn't go, if whatever you said wasn't positive, they were going to fix you. If Suge don't get out, boy, you're gonna be in deep trouble, Frank. Who? You.
I had some loyalty to Death Row, and I still do. I just think that it was the thing to do. Talk to Mr. Knight, let him know that I was leaving, so that I can be clear of Death Row.
Everything that Suge does, Reggie knows. Because I tell you right now, anything goes down with Suge, you know who's gonna run this company? Reggie.
Wrong. What do you mean, Death Row?
He would much rather see it turn over to Reggie.
Nope, wrong, because then everything comes back on Reggie.
In corporate America and national security, the head of security shown to be negligent at the least during an assassination is asked to find another line of work. Reggie Wright got a promotion.
He goes, yeah, if anything happens, anything comes up, Reggie would be the one running the whole day in and day out operation.
Man, I can't see it.
Reggie's dad told me that.
Well,
He said, Michael, if anything happens to Suge, this is what he told me. Anything happens to Suge, Reggie would run the majority of the company. One thing Suge didn't do is he didn't blame any of it for Reggie. And trust me, the shit was all Reggie's fault.
Yeah, it was. It was all Reggie's fault. It should have been blamed on Reggie.
You know, I mean, it wasn't even something where you could debate it. Any common sense tells you that the fault was adjourned. Every one of them decisions that got me out of there, you in there, and everything else, all that came from Reggie's mouth.
Did it not bother Knight that Shakur, his most lucrative asset on the Death Row label, was dead on Wright's watch?
His comment was, we ain't gonna be hurting for nothing.
Who is we?
He said, we ain't. This is what he told me. I said, dang man, that's pretty sad. I said, financially, that's gonna fuck some shit up. And he goes, we ain't gonna be hurting for nothing.
Reggie Wright and me had different opinions. And I talked to Reggie Wright about it.
Well, Suge asked me what I was going to do.
Yeah, what you gonna do, Frank? What you gonna do? Do you know what he meant?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. Obviously, I don't. What did he mean?
He wanted you to take someone out. I said, Reggie, what was Suge implying? And then Reggie, he got sort of stupid on me. Nigga, you don't know see what I'm saying? He said, you don't know what's up? Niggas need to be disappeared around here.
I put in my work for him. I did my time with him.
They recommend you don't get subpoenaed, or whatever that's worth. I don't know what it means, but that's what they told me to tell you.
You know, the situation and the way it went down.
You know, because they think somebody was in my organization working for the FBI.
Pac stayed in the Peninsula Hotel, and Kevin and I shared a room on a rotating schedule. When he would leave, I would be in that room and vice versa. One night, Kevin told me when I was coming on duty, hey, be careful about things that you say when you're on the telephone, when you're in this room, or when you're around in the hallways or wherever. He goes, because you never know who's listening. You don't know if they got wiretaps. You don't know, what's going on. And it never dawned on me, and I never gave it, any kind of thought one way or another what he meant by saying that to me. And because he didn't tell me, he didn't just come right out and say, I'm an undercover FBI informant or anything like that.
That was God's choice. It has nothing to do with Frank or any unprofessional moves he made or something he didn't do right, because that is not the case at all. And I'm hearing things that I don't like, and I think that you and I both know that Frank is not at fault whatsoever, and that's something that you should take back to your people, because I'm hearing things that I don't like.
Would I blame the Outlaws because they didn't jump in front of the bullet and take it? Could I blame them young people because they was in the third car, not the second? From the jump, I never thought that. From the jump, I never thought that Frank didn't serve him to the best of his ability. Afterwards, I know how he felt. I know how people felt. But I saw what the predicament that he was in. I know he would ever put himself in that predicament again. But I know that he didn't put himself in that predicament for that to happen.
I was still going through the pain of Tupac's death. I was sitting at home. I had gotten a book deal. I had gone to New York, and I was getting ready to put all of that stuff together. And then the manuscript was being written. But I was sitting there with a 9mm, in my manuscript, getting ready to shoot myself. I was ready to just end life because so much death was surrounding me at that time. So I was like basically like ready to give up. And I looked down up under my cocktail table, and it was a glass top, and there was a book down there that a friend of mine had given me and said, "The Life You Were Born to Live." And I looked at that book right at the same time I was thinking of contemplating suicide. I looked at that book and I picked it up and I was like, "The life I was born to live. Life I was born to live. Life I was born to live."
I came in and out when Tracy was working with Pac on the videos and his plans. And the one thing I can also tell you is that Pac, Tracy, we all have plans to have facilities and do this work with our locked up youth. And we have major plans. We did a series of recordings, we taped, and we outlined a movement that would help to educate kids all over the country and to use our art to penetrate.
This is the microphone sessions. For those of you who've never been before, this workshop actually started with Pac and Ray Love. There was a group of 7 of us that met in my living room on these rugs 20 years ago. And our goal was to be a group of writers that wrote together and addressed issues. And every week we would come up with a topic. And so when I started this workshop, I thought I was the teacher and I was running things. And so Pac didn't come for the first few months. For the first few months there was 5 of us. And every week we'd meet and I would give the assignment. And I ran things. And then came Tupac. And he came for 2 weeks and wrote on topic. By the 3rd week, he said, "What made you think you were running things? Why do you think you get to pick topics?"
Layla is a fearless lady. She's just going for it. She's not gonna stop doing what she's doing. She's even kill. She keeps on doing. It's like, I haven't been here in a while. It's a different group of faces. It's the same energy. She's still giving her heart.
You kind of get what you ask for. And because Pac refused to let me run things, we shared the running of the space. And each week, all of us from our very different worlds wrote on a topic, and then we would put together a 90-minute assembly, cell phones to vibrate. From here on out, we're recording. Mine, better make sure.
I promise everything will be fine. Motherfuck Ray and the J Valentine. As if you didn't know, I'ma show you that Doja was that brother that your show should have signed.
When Pac died, it was definitely equivalent to a president being assassinated, and it really took a toll on me. But when I met Layla, it was inspirational because Layla represented a part of Pac that a lot of people like myself didn't know, which was that Pac was very well read and that it wasn't an accident that he said some of these powerful things in his music.
I just want you to keep doing it because you're already a young teacher and you're really powerful. And I know you look at me crazy when I say that because I don't think you've been validated very much. But I think in this group, you'll begin to really be validated for your honesty.
I spoke at Layla Steinberg's poetry class in North Hollywood. It was amazing. I loved it. I loved speaking to the kids and the people that were there about Tupac. There was a tribute to him there. It was really nice. And I talked about the what if game.
Credibility is dead in the times we're living in. They may say they're loyal. They talked about loyalty. Maybe back then may have been some loyalty, but now it's when people get that time hanging over their heads, people getting older now, people that know something, it is now becoming like cancer. And they got to notify somebody that there's something wrong.
What about the former detectives of Compton? Were they so sure that they had their man with Anderson, that after 10 years their informants have come up with nothing new? Police often use informants to help investigations move, but informant information can be considered unreliable.
I don't care what people say. People gonna snitch when you sitting there, when you looking at 50 years on your head.
According to the Los Angeles Times, 2 days after the shooting, 2 Crips were seen in Compton driving a white 1996 Cadillac bearing a rental sticker. An informant told the Compton PD that Crips had visited a car stereo shop whose owner also did body work. They believed that the Crips brought the car to the stereo shop to have damage repaired. The Times also goes on to claim that the Compton police found that a Carson Enterprise rental car agency had rented such a car to a man with possible ties to the gang underground. They took a photograph of the car and detailed their findings in a report. Compton investigators say they gave this additional information to Las Vegas police. Manning said his detectives never received it. If any part of the Compton Police Department report regarding a rented white Cadillac is to be believed, you have to start with the fact that it was a rented car. Someone would have had to have rented it, used their license, given a credit card. Yet, to date, no copy of the rental contract has ever been released by the Las Vegas police, nor has the name of the person who rented the car been made known as fact. Unless the Compton Police Department is willing to extend the gang rivalry theory to include the employees of Enterprise, it stands to reason that an identifiable person, provable in any court-competent jurisdiction as evidence, could be identified and possibly charged as an accessory to the murder. And what about Vegas police?
I think that the reason a lot of it was covered up is because most people that worked for death row security had a badge of some type. They were either law enforcement officers, they were fire department officers, but all of them had a badge of some type. And they were able to pull them badges out to get in and out of certain situations. And I think the ball was dropped right there. I think people had badges, they didn't want to push the issue, and they chose to overlook looking at death row. And when I look at all what's happened with Rampart, people that we had working for death row, where we had Los Angeles police officers working within the organization, Compton police officers working with inside the organization, that is where it failed. People had badges, people had careers, and that's exactly what they did. Me, myself, I was able to pull out my fire department badge when I got into a situation. Said, hey, I work for the fire department. People were pulling out Orange County badges. People were pulling out LAPD badges. People were pulling out Compton badges.
But yeah, you had a lot of guys with badges. And I would think that those guys who were hired by Suge and were with him that night would have been interviewed by the police. But I mean, maybe they know something.
Well, when you have police officers interviewing police officers, I believe the code of silence came and took place in Las Vegas, even when it came to dealing with security.
I found that there was a tightness. Everywhere you went, there was like this tightness that nobody wanted to. It was almost like people were afraid to talk about the case. I mean, there was a weird sort of ring around the investigation that was tough to penetrate. And I was getting a lot from cops inside, and I did report that Metropolitan Police in Las Vegas were on Suge Knight's payroll.
Where security themselves, they were quiet. No one was saying anything. So deep down inside, I personally believe them badges stopped us from getting to the truth.
Was it possible to buy off the police and prosecution of Las Vegas to cover up illegal wrongdoing on the night of the murder? If you ask Vegas strip club owner Michael Ghilardi, as part of his FBI informant testimony, it was. In one interview with the FBI, Ghilardi said that he maintained cash reserves or club banks of $75,000 at Cheetahs and $125,000 at Jaguars. Typically, the policemen would each have access to $500 per visit. The practice of catering to policemen started from the time Ghilardi said he opened in 1990 to buy drinks and lap dances for those individuals. All told, Ghilardi implicated at least 11 police officers, all of whose identities were removed from the documents obtained by the Las Vegas Sun. Ghilardi told FBI agents that he dealt directly with 2 local prosecutors. Ghilardi estimated that one of those prosecutors received $10,000 worth of sexual favors, lap dances, and drinks. He also claimed to have given at least $5,000 in services to 2 other prosecutors. Finally, over a 10-year period, Ghilardi estimated that he gave judges in Clark County a total of $100,000 to $200,000. Could they have also been paid off by those with the means to do so to cover up the Shakur murder? One thing that Ghilardi, the man who bought off the police and judges, shares with Knight, both were represented by George Calisis. For his part, Sheriff Bill Young told the Las Vegas Sun that the activities of the officers did not rise to the level of crimes. Apparently, bribery and corruption isn't a crime in Las Vegas anymore. And how do now retired Sheriff Bill Young and George Calisis still keep in touch? They are both on the board of directors of Hookers for Jesus, led ironically enough by an ex-prostitute arrested more by Young than any other officer. And what of Ghilardi? Was his word any better than those he accused? As a star witness for the FBI, it apparently was. Who would be capable of influencing an investigation? One thing is certain. Until they decide to come forward with what they do have, the police can make all the claims they want, and there's nothing to stop them.
We are looking for a suspect vehicle which was described as a white or off-white cab-like.
It amazes me that when we have professional bodyguards as part of this entourage, that they can't even give us an accurate description of the vehicle.
Again, which is described as a white or light-colored newer cab.
I can't understand how a man with a status so high can get murdered on the streets and they let it just slide. If I could just prophesize and open up their eyes, expose their every move and catch them in their lies. Witness situations getting out of hand, there's a hole in the system, homie, this is not the plan. Nope, it's obvious, they left us in the cold. Why you think they call them homicide? Cause everybody froze, and it shows. Case closed, y'all people crooked, man, and everybody knows. How the hell can you brag about a case on a TV show, homie, but the pot case blows? Got y'all killing with the flow. If you can't comprehend, I'm talking to the po-po. Pac was right, things won't change, so I figure I'll take the torch to spark a little flame. Pac told y'all niggas about the pump police, man, they crooked. Gotta keep your eyes on these chumps when you're moving through the streets, cause they crooked. Try to understand in your heart they could never be peace, cause they crooked. That's why we ride with the heat when we roll through the streets, cause they crooked. Mind over matter, I can't tell, there's a spell in these streets and I wonder if it's hell. Then what's jail? The belly of the beast, so I'm knowing in my heart there could never be peace. Sorry. Then they wonder why we gooned out, cause every time we try to speak all they do is tune us out. Now you shut up. And I ain't even playing games, to be honest, all y'all should take the blame. Yeah, for justice not being served. Got some nerve to hypnotize us with false words. Stop lying. It ain't fair, man, just listen to the Don Dog, they don't really care, man. Never lie. And that's how it's going down. They look the other way every time we face down. Ain't see nothing. Just ride for me, homie. If I die, don't let the law ride for me, homie. Dog told y'all niggas about the pump police, man, they crooked. Gotta keep your eyes on these chumps when you're moving through the streets, cause they crooked. Try to understand in your heart they could never be peace, cause they crooked. That's why we ride with the heat when we roll through the streets, cause they crooked. Yeah, crooked as they is, crooked as they come. Crooked when they start, crooked when they done. Hey, crooked as they is, crooked when they come. Crooked when they start, crooked when they done. Hey, crooked.
There would appear to be substantial evidence to refute the claims made by Brennan and the Compton PD if left to the strength of Brennan's single affidavit. Of course, we have very little else from which to determine where the Orlando Anderson myth and the gang war myth started. Either the evidence of Anderson's involvement or the evidence of a gang retaliation is behind the veil of the ongoing investigation, or it simply doesn't exist.
This was probably around, I'm going to say June, possibly July timeframe. We were going into the House of Blues, and it was just a hangout day. We were going there. Pac wasn't performing or anything like that. So this wasn't the footage from the House of Blues. It's been recorded with him. And it was myself, Reggie Wright, Kevin Hackey, and the Outlaws. We were going into the House of Blues on a side door where the entertainers go in at. And there was this guy there, and it was a brother, he was a tall guy. And he was patting everyone down as we were going through that entrance. Not the main artist, but everyone else that was with us, okay? And he patted down Hussein Fatal. Hussein Fatal was one of the backup outlaw singers. And when he patted him down, Fatal had a gun on him. And it was a Glock 40 cal gun, handgun. And the guy said, "This guy has a gun." And everybody stopped in their tracks, turned, Tupac turned, Reggie turned. I was right behind Fatal. Pac was pissed. He was pissed. And he said, "Frank, go put this fool into the limo." Okay? So I take Hussein Fatal and I walk him back to the limo, and he's drunk. Fatal's drunk. So I get him back to the limo. When I walked back up, Kevin Hackey and Reggie were standing there talking to this guy at the door. And my part of the story starts and ends right there, because the gun, from that point, the guy identified himself as a Santa Monica police officer that was off-duty working the House of Blues. So the story picks up now with Kevin Hackey. Kevin Hackey has said this in the Fox interview that he and I did in December of 2007, that incident that happened at the House of Blues with that gun was that Reggie had him go over to Santa Monica PD, pick the gun up, and take the gun back to Reggie. Now this is Kevin's story. He gave the gun to Reggie. What happened with the gun from there, Kevin says, Reggie gave it to his daddy, as quote unquote, Kevin says in the interview with Fox, that he gave it to his daddy at Compton. Now Compton was still a police department at this time. The sheriff's department hadn't taken it over. So this gun supposedly had ended up in evidence. Okay, now who knows what happened with this 40 cal Glock? We don't know, I don't know, and Kevin supposedly don't know from the time he picked it up and gave it back to Reggie. So the gun and the paper trail of the gun ends with Kevin picking it up, taking it to Reggie, Reggie giving it to his father. Paper trail ends there. Or the story with the gun ends there. Other than the fact that when Compton PD did a raid after Tupac's death in Compton, they found a 40 cal Glock in a bag. Okay, that belonged to Orlando Anderson, I believe.
Chuck Phillips wrote a controversial story published by The Times on September 6, 2002.
Chuck Phillips came along because he was a award-winning writer. He had some credibility.
In a piece titled, "Who Killed Tupac Shakur?" and based on unnamed gangland sources, Phillips wrote that Shakur was killed in Las Vegas on September 7, 1996, by members of a Compton gang called the Southside Crips.
Well, I think the LA Times article, and I don't want to, I don't want to point the finger at another reporter, but I do think that my understanding from talking to two gang cops out of Compton, the Compton Police Department at the time, which has since been disbanded, said that they spoke to the source, one source.
According to Phillips' story, the triggerman in Tupac's killing was an LA Crip named Orlando Anderson, who was later killed in an unrelated matter.
The first time he wrote it, it sounded really weird, but there was because of his credibility and because of who he wrote with. You thought about it, but it didn't make real sense because you gotta know it was bigger.
By fingering two dead men, Anderson and Biggie Smalls, as Tupac's killers, Phillips' story took the focus off Suge Knight. Phillips' story also claimed that Biggie was later killed by the Crips for stiffing them.
One source on that story, a little gangbanger out of Compton, who they told me is still laughing his head off.
The murder weapon, the story states, was supplied by New York rapper Notorious B.I.G., who agreed to pay the Crips $1 million for killing Shakur. The piece described how Biggie Smalls met with the gangsters on the night of the murder in the penthouse suite at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, where he was allegedly registered under a false name.
So I don't know what, except that Chuck Phillips was irresponsible in writing it.
Because look what I did. I say it here and it comes out there. He duped, I believe, the LA Times reporter, Chuck Phillips.
And then one of my sons said to me, Chuck Phillips is on Suge's payroll. Oh, okay, then that's the end of that.
Biggie Smalls in town, because Biggie Smalls was in a New York studio cutting a record that night.
Mutulu Shakur, in an open letter to Biggie Small's family, stated, as a matter of fact, Afeni and I have never supported a Crip versus Blood feud.
Now when he comes back and he writes, because he called us to tell us he was going to write it. Now he's back on, see, because what he did there is what he did then, is he took a little bit of some truth and he put other stuff in it. Because in '94, when Pac got shot, Biggie came to the hospital. Biggie stayed at the hospital that night.
That was supposed to be a book deal for him. He's coming out with this article, and that was going to get him a book deal. He already had a book publisher interested, and it never happened because Biggie Small's mother immediately cried foul.
Biggie retrieved one of the weapons to give to the cousin, whatever that was left there. Biggie was there that night as shocked as anybody else in terms of what you're looking at.
And you know, her son was in New York, and how could they not verify? How could the reporter not verify Biggie Small's whereabouts when you're accusing him of murder in a two-part series on the front page on the Sunday edition of the LA Times? You know, you think you would have gotten that part confirmed and wouldn't confirm it with a little gangbanger out of Compton. It was so wrong, it was unbelievable.
What I know is that night when he got shot, Biggie was at the hospital. And he was not at the hospital gloating.
People I was dealing with, talking to people in the entertainment media who were just shaking their heads. How could he possibly get that wrong?
It wasn't meant to be. It was meant for him to die and for this to happen, for people to still be talking about it.
And that's good.
That's right. For the effect that he has on people, for the livelihood that he has provided for people, all of that.
I have nothing to lie about. I'm doing for my friend, for my brother, what I think he would have done for anyone else and stood up for in his belief and in the political person that was inside of him. I believe that Pac would have been doing the same thing that I'm doing, fighting for my justice as well as I'm fighting for his justice. I truly believe that with all my heart.
They've said the same thing about his mother, about capitalizing and exploiting. So that's neither here nor there. He was what he was, and he was a commodity in his head.
I know I'm going this way, so I don't want to pay nobody to ride with me. You know what I mean? I would much rather you get yours and I get mine together. Let's do that instead of just being like, look, at the next spot we gonna get paid. It go 10,000. Why? I know we're gonna make it there. Go with us, and you'll make more than that. It goes 10 while you wait. You know what I mean? Like that. That's what I feel.
He was the best that we had in terms of the ability to make money, and the documentaries and all of that. Here's the thing. The good people do it and the bad people do it. If the bad people can do it, why can't the good people can do it? If the people that didn't like him can do it, why can't the people that cared for him do it? If the person who's doing it now, who's behind it now, has a yearning in his soul and spirit, which I truly believe, to get to the bottom of it as far as he can go with it, to do all that he can to rectify that thing, to make that thing right, to make it okay, to make it as best that he can, to put out as much as he can about it, to make it right with himself in his soul. Why the hell not? Why stop that?
Every time I think it's over, they drag me right back in again.
I do not doubt Frank Alexander's motives.
John 8:32 will set you free. Read it, figure it out.
It affected him in a way that I haven't heard it affect no one else that was around him, that professed to love him. He didn't try to rip his mother off, and he didn't tell his mother a lie.
I visited the Tupac Shakur Foundation this year in April. We had a film festival down in Atlanta, the Spaghetti Junction Film Festival. The foundation came out, they showed their support. They're behind our project and what we are doing. It's a good thing.
If he makes money, he's gonna make some contribution. If he don't, he will have done all that he felt he could to get to the bottom of it. We can't do it.
When I went to the foundation with my own eyes and my own body, I got to walk those grounds. I got to walk through the Peace Garden, and it was amazing. It was comfort. I felt the peace in the Peace Garden. I felt that Pac's spirit was amongst the grounds of those 6 acres down there.
Pac would have said y'all punks for not doing it. You're a punk, Frank. You was there for not doing it. Why wouldn't Frank think that what his bond was Pac was his bond? What he felt from Pac, how can I say he didn't feel it? He hasn't shown anything to the contrary. I don't know anything different from Pac, however that length that was. Frank came to his mother, asked permission every time. I got your back, got that, saw it, could I do it, that, read it, whatever. She never said to, I don't like what he's done.
Why is it that in 2008, we can take a baseball player to Congress and put a steroid issue in front of the American taxpayers to solve what? Whether he used steroids or not? Who cares? Let's solve a murder. Let's bring the Department of Justice in, reopen this case that I assume is closed. Let's bring justice for Tupac Shakur. I believe he's resting in peace in heaven, but on this earth, I bet you he's turning in his grave.
In order to get a grand jury indictment in any jurisdiction in this country, what you need is probable cause. You do not have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the standard for trial. Can circumstantial evidence be used in a murder case? The trial of Scott Peterson for the murders of his wife Lacey and their unborn child Connor is a classic example of a prosecution based almost solely on circumstantial evidence rather than direct evidence. In some cases, there can be some evidence that cannot be proven directly, such as with an eyewitness. In these cases, the prosecution will attempt to provide evidence of the circumstances from which the jury can logically deduct or reasonably infer the fact that cannot be proven directly. The prosecutor believes the fact can be proven by the evidence of the circumstances or circumstantial evidence. There is little more we know about the truth behind the murders as of now. And speaking of truth, why believe anything Knight would say? It is clear that Knight has not been honest under oath and has, in fact, stated that he would not cooperate with police in solving the murder. Is that why Death Row never placed a reward for information leading to the arrest of the killers? In his bankruptcy, Knight has taken dozens of opportunities to abscond money from the estate, hide master tapes, and transfer millions of dollars and property in an attempt to defraud creditors. The Committee for the Unsecured Creditors of Knight and Death Row are only now beginning to sift through the number of people that worked with Knight to conceal assets. And to his part, Wright has conspired with Knight on other activities that violate laws of the state. Take, for example, Knight's claim in his bankruptcy examination that he did no business while he was in prison. Why then would the McPherson attorneys mention taking trips to the prison with Wright, where Knight was housed, for the express purpose of discussing the operations of Death Row? And while Reggie has claimed to receive no direct benefit from it, Knight transferred all of his interests in his Wilshire property address to Wright. Why would he do such a thing? Rightway security guard Kevin Hackey stated in a pretrial deposition, Chuck Phillips was frequently at Death Row functions and received payments from Death Row records. Hackey backed off this statement at trial, but he also tried to back away from everything he had told investigators, stating convincingly, "I'm in fear for my life." Asked what he feared, Hackey stated, "Retribution by the Bloods, the Los Angeles Police Department, and associates of Death Row Records."
What does it take when it's in black and white and the evidence is there, the documentation is there? What more? I can't even stress it enough. What more is it that you need or that you want? Why are you jumping on the dark side when in the light the truth is right there and all you have to do is open your eyes and see it? I don't get it. I just don't get that. I still today miss him. I'll mourn him until I join him, you know. And that's just it, you know. That's all I have to say on that.
Some people out there don't want us to represent the Don, man. They just want us to stop. This the reckoning. Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding. Till my homie get peace, to the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding. Till my homie get peace, to the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. Apply pressure, don't let it stress you. Keep your eyes open, you close them, that's when they get you. You ever get lost, go to the scripture. Never let them play with your mind, label a mister. This the truth that you hearing coming from the booth. Humble on part 1, mooring on part 2. I hope that they peep it in plenty ways. We no longer speaking, the motive is AK. Hey K, they thought it was over cause they ain't like that. Circle the block, backtrack, we right back. It's all for the death of the homeboy. The realest rapper that lived, that's what we ride for. Come on, separate the real from the phony. Can't dodge death when bullets coming from your homies. Yes sir, my mind unfolds on different levels. Know that I'm strapped and surrounded by plenty devils. Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. It won't stop, it don't stop. No, telling all the fans the truth about Pac. Yeah, giving them reasons to ask questions. Countless nights of interviews, no resting. We put it together to teach a lesson. Open up your mind, be grateful for every blessing. Don't get it confused, we on a mission. Never would you see it so vivid, this is not fiction. A million theories, but there is one truth. If it was you, tell me, what would you wanna do? The world's been waiting for explanations. Well, here it is now for those patiently waiting. Who could be next? How could we tell? Who could you trust? There's no one left, they all fail. All fail. I give you my word, this is the real deal. The closest people to Pac, about to seal the deal. Ride on down, down. Keep riding, keep riding. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. Ride on down, down. Keep riding. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. It don't stop, it won't stop, it can't stop. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning. It don't stop, it won't stop, it can't stop. Till my homie get peace, till the world get peace, till we all get peace. We gon' call it the reckoning.